Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about level design. We're going to specifically focus on the player's goal, the flow, and creating a layout for our level. Before we start planning our level, we need to make some design decisions based on the brainstorm we did in the last video. First, who is the playable character? After my brainstorm in the last video, I decided to settle on the Robo Puppy, who I'm going to name Lucy. Next, when and where does this take place? I settled on present day, and it takes place in a house. Why are they there? Why is the player there? Since the Robo Puppy is in a house, it most likely belongs to a child who lives there. And what do they need to do? Well, I decided, based on my brainstorm, that I want the player to explore, to find a cat toy as a quest, and to collect dog treats along the way, avoid traps, and eventually escape. For this process, we're going to take a goal-first approach. First, what is the win condition, or the overall goal we want the player to accomplish? Where is that goal in the world? Where do they need to get to? Then design backwards from that point. Think about player paths that the player would take to reach that goal, and what obstacles would they need to overcome along the way. When designing a level, we want to focus on telling the player where they are trying to go, but not how they get there. Exploration and discovery is part of the joy of playing through a level, and so we don't want to tell the player exactly what to do, we just want them to know what they are trying to do. So we start by figuring out where is going to be the goal on the level, and where is the player going to start. Then we might think about the most reasonable way to get to that goal, and what obstacles are along the way. And then we want to think about some alternative routes the player might take, and where we might place different obstacles if they choose those other routes. When we're placing challenges for the player, we want to keep in mind the player flow. This graph has time or progress along the bottom, and challenge or excitement as the y-axis. And so as time progresses, or as the player progresses through the space, we want to increase the challenge and the level of excitement. But we want to do it in a very specific way. First, we want something really exciting to happen right at the beginning. It doesn't necessarily need to be challenging, but it should be the hook that gets the player excited about playing this game. After each moment of excitement, we want a moment of rest, a way for the player to calm back down and to think about what they just discovered or learned how to do. As we go through this process, we continue to increase the difficulty while still giving the player moments of rest in between. At the end, we want to have the highest point of excitement, or the climax of the story. And don't forget to resolve the climax, so we have a resolution at the end and we don't end in an extreme moment of stress or excitement. If I draw a line along the bottom, just below all of the low points, if we dip too low below this line, basically the game is too easy. If we don't increase the difficulty enough or offer enough challenges, the player will get bored. On the other hand, if I draw a line across the top, we can see that if we increase the difficulty too much or too quickly, it will be too challenging for the player and they may become stressed out. The ideal is to stay in between these two lines and to create flow. Flow is what we call when the player is being challenged exactly the right amount to keep them excited and interested without making them feel like they are too stressed out to continue playing. Next, we're going to draw the layout. We want to start by drawing the player's goal, the player's start location, some different paths the player might take, and the obstacles they'll face along the way. And we want to be sure to label everything. So I'll start by drawing the player goal, which is going to be a door that lets them escape, and then I'll draw out the player's start location. Now I start thinking about where the player is going to go along the way. Maybe they start on a landing and they go down some stairs, and I want to have dog treats as the collectibles along the way. I also want to have a cat that's going to give them a quest to find the cat toy. I remember also in my brainstorm having a bouncy ball, and maybe this can be something that can act as a power-up. Then I'll just continue filling in the space with different things for the player to do. Maybe I have a locked toy box that the player needs to find a key for. And along the way, I'm going to draw extra lines for walls to create sort of hallways. Here's maybe where I'll have the key for the toy box. And maybe I'll have some kind of trap. Maybe I'll have a rug or some broken boards or something. Maybe at the end of this hallway there's a door so I can have the whole thing wrap back around and connect together. And then in this alcove here, maybe this is where I'll put the cat toy as the quest item for the player to collect. Remember not to spend too much time on any one layout. You want to quickly switch between drawing different layouts until you have a bunch of different ones to choose from. Don't settle on the first one that you draw. So I'm going to once again start with a landing and some stairs to go down, and encountering the cat first this time. Then maybe around on the side I'll have the locked toy box. Continue to add the dog treat collectibles as I go along. Then maybe on the other side of the cat is where I'll have the toy box key, so it's a little bit spaced a little farther apart. The player needs to go around a little bit more, encouraging more exploration. Then here I'll have the cat toy as the quest item, and maybe I'll have it in a locked room this time, so the player actually has to find a key to get into the closet, and maybe that key is in the locked toy box. This adds an extra layer for the player. In this one, I'm also going to add a toddler that's going to patrol back and forth, that's going to act as an enemy. And I once again want to have my ball as the power-up. And I think what would be interesting is if the ball lets you bounce up the stairs, and so the player needs to collect the ball in order to get out. Remember to draw the player paths along the way as you're going, and figure out what do you think is the most likely path for the player to take, but also what are some other ways the player might go. So don't just draw what you think is the ideal path. Draw a bunch of different options for how the player might get through the level, and give consideration to different play styles that the player might have. In the next video, we're going to import this layout into Unity and start building a white box on top of it. Thanks for joining, and if you enjoyed this, I hope you'll like and subscribe.